Clyde and welcome to How the World Will End. It's my take on how we may intentionally or accidentally meet our own extinction. The other day I had a conversation with a pastor, and we both came to the conclusion that with all of the fear-mongering and all of the death tolls, there's not been one person who says that perhaps we should demonstrate a little faith in God to get through the pandemic. Now, God has been forgotten with the arrival of COVID-19. Let's face it. It's as if God is dead, and there really is no one championing the idea that America has turned to God in times like these. Even after 9/11, President George W. Bush led prayer rallies, even asked Muslim imams to carry out prayers for the survivors and the dead as well. Today, it's all about Bill Gates, Sanjay Gupta, Dr. Fauci, the three wise men who people are mistaking for heroes and saviors. While we pay attention to the growing number of COVID-19 cases, we're overlooking the fact that there are now more than hundreds of thousands of people worldwide who've recovered from it, and they've survived. Many have yet to be tested, but the majority of survivors are young, healthy, and eager to re-engage in life and work, normal activity. We also know that reinfection cases are extremely rare and unlikely, but hey, nothing's foolproof. We had a flu vaccine last year, a couple years ago, and 80,000 people died even with the flu and a vaccine. So far, we're seeing 70,000 COVID-19 dead, maybe more. I mean, we have projections going into the hundreds of thousands of people, models being proposed for August pushing who knows how many numbers. It's enough to scare governors into pushing their citizens into quarantine fatigue and diminish their hopes for a future. This is no longer sensible, and it's no longer appropriate. COVID-19 complicates everything, and I'm sure that everyone will have to get over their fear of it. But we all die of something, and to prolong the fear for an agenda is pathological and is simply a form of gaslighting. I know that COVID-19 is causing fear and besieging hospitals. The hyperacute nature of this epidemic is tragic and overwhelming, but I'm urging people to look at the big picture. We need to replace fear and anxiety with a level-headed approach based on data-driven messages, strategies, and policies. And we need to throw in faith for good measure. Not political agendas and neo-Orwellian slogans like the new normal or we're all in this together. Fact is, public health and a stable economy goes hand in hand, but in the current COVID-19 response, we have pitted these against each other. We're hearing more political attacks with no solutions and watching news reporters giving over-dramatic play-by-plays from their basement and then pretending to be leaving it for the first time when we already know that they've been outside. The whole reality TV show thing is getting pretty old. It's trite and it's obvious. This is where we fail. This is going to be the real killer. Life after COVID-19 has to deal with reality. Not projections or agendas being pushed by mercenary scientists with stock in big pharma and renegade manufacturers of bathtub vaccines. No, we need to live with the idea that this virus is likely to be one that comes back year upon year upon year and becomes like a seasonal virus, and communities will become immune to it. That's going to be an important part of controlling this in the longer term. See, it's likely then that the new coronavirus will be a lingering part of American life for at least a year, if not much longer than that. If the current round of social distancing measures work, the pandemic may ebb enough for things to return to a semblance of normalcy. Offices could fill up, bars could fill up again, we could all be open, and we could sing out-of-tune karaoke till the cows come home. Schools could reopen, and friends could reunite. But as the status quo returns, so too will the virus. We know this. This doesn't mean, though, that society must be on continuous lockdown until 2022. We just need to always be vigilant and do things to boost the immune system, things like exercise, eating right, taking proven and effective supplements, stop smoking, abusing drugs, stop drinking, all these things that are common sense. So why can't better health and better hygiene become the new normal? Why can't better leadership that actually cares about the general welfare be the new normal? Or the respect for human dignity and the human rights of a person become a national goal and a new normal? See, isolation cannot be the new normal. Violating or negating constitutional rights cannot be the new normal. In fact, the new normal is hardly normal. The new normal is dehumanizing. Isolating the population would only temporarily suppress the virus, but it would quickly reemerge and the crisis would be repeated. But there is more. After infections begin ebbing, a secondary pandemic of mental health problems will follow. At a moment of profound dread and uncertainty, people are being cut off from soothing human contact. Hugs, handshakes, and other social rituals are now tinged with danger. People with anxiety or obsessive-compulsive disorder are struggling. Elderly people who are already excluded from much of public life are being asked to distance themselves even further, deepening their loneliness. Incidents of domestic violence and child abuse are likely to spike as people are forced to stay in unsafe homes. Children whose bodies are mostly spared by the virus may endure mental trauma that stays with them into adulthood. After the pandemic, people who recover from COVID-19 might be shunned and stigmatized. In fact, If you've been reading the latest obituaries of people who have died recently, there are families that are now specifically adding their loved ones have not died from COVID-19 to eliminate any and all speculation. In fact, many people would rather not specify to avoid unwanted attention by the media, while celebrities and politicians are now flaunting loved ones that either have it or have died from it. People who went through long bouts of quarantine will carry the scars of their experience. When people return to work, they'll find themselves dealing with burnout and post-traumatic stress. We live in an era where mass media controls the picture of the world that people have in their minds. The media has now scared us into becoming zombies to their numbers, statistics, and they have utilized peer pressure and coercion as a science to prove that our lockdown world needs to continue. The only science we're learning now is that herd mentality is far more effective than herd immunity. Everyone understands that the damage done to our economy may already exceed the damage done to our health and well-being. It's not a noble activity, of course. We shouldn't put a price on our lives, but now we're comparing lives to other lives, and certain lives need to live and other lives need to go. In my opinion, COVID-19 is no longer about science or health. It's about politics and money. And now with a dead stacked like cordwood, the politicians can kick the corpses for loose change. And of course, they're hiring their Stasi police to track down and round up the non-believers, and those that can't continue will be gaslighted and thrown under the bus. Most of them will not recover from the economic downfall, and they will eventually die. The increases in suicide, addiction, and incidents of physical illness associated with unemployment cost lives. Quote Ben Rickard from The Big Short, played by Brad Pitt. He said, here's a number to think about. Every time 1% employment goes up, 40,000 people die. Did you know that? Oh, but if you mention this, you're told you're anti-science. No, it's not about being anti-science. It's about trying to warn people that what we're doing is essentially bringing about our own extinction, a dehumanizing agenda that can actually precipitate the end of the world. This has been How the World Will End. If you want to be prepared for what comes next, go to preparewithgroundzero.com. That's preparewithgroundzero.com.